There's a particular kind of silence some people keep. You don't post much. You rarely comment. Your status stays empty for days, sometimes weeks. To most people, it looks like absence, disinterest, distance. But you're not absent. You see the updates. You read the captions. You notice who changed their profile picture and who stopped showing up. You register tone shifts in someone's story. You pick up on subtle dynamics others miss. Most people assume this means one thing, that you're detached, antisocial, maybe even indifferent. But that's not actually what's happening. If anything, you might be one of the most observant people in the room. And yet, that part of you often goes unseen. This pattern, being offline but always watching, is usually reduced to something shallow. People call it lurking, avoidance, shyness, social anxiety, or worse, they frame it as secrecy. But that explanation misses the depth of what's really going on. There's more happening beneath this than people realize. At a psychological level, this behavior often reflects a preference for observation before participation. Some nervous systems are wired to scan first, speak later, to gather context, to understand dynamics, to map the emotional landscape before stepping into it. Research in social neuroscience shows that people vary significantly in social monitoring sensitivity. Some brains are more attuned to micro-expressions, tone shifts, subtle relational cues. This heightened awareness isn't loud. It's quiet, internal, continuous. You might scroll not because you're bored, but because you're calibrating. You're reading patterns, you're assessing safety, you're tracking social equilibrium. But here's where it becomes more interesting. Remaining offline can also be a form of emotional boundary. When you don't post, you control the narrative. You decide what parts of you are visible. You're not obligated to perform happiness, productivity, or connection on demand. In a digital culture that rewards visibility, choosing invisibility can be deeply regulating. Your brain may have learned that exposure equals vulnerability, and vulnerability, at some point in your life, may not have felt safe. There's another layer most people miss. Observation creates a sense of control. When you're the one watching, you're not being evaluated. You're not waiting for likes. You're not decoding someone else's silence toward you. You're on stable ground. From a behavioral perspective, this can become reinforcing. The less you expose, the less you risk social discomfort. The nervous system learns this is safer. And over time, safety becomes the priority. This doesn't mean you don't want connection. Often it means you want depth without spectacle, authenticity without performance, presence without pressure. Developmentally, many people who adopt this pattern grew up in environments where emotional attunement mattered. Maybe you learned to read moods quickly. Maybe harmony depended on your ability to sense tension before it escalated. Maybe visibility brought scrutiny. Children in such environments often become highly perceptive adults. They track tone shifts instinctively. They notice what isn't said. They understand relational undercurrents without needing them explained. But they may also learn that it's safer to observe than to reveal. This isn't a flaw, it's an adaptation. The nervous system organizes itself around repeated experiences. If exposure once led to misunderstanding, embarrassment, or dismissal, it makes sense that your system would become selective about when and how you show up. Different nervous systems adapt differently. Some become expressive and outward. Others become watchful and contained. Neither is superior, neither is defective. They're simply different survival strategies shaped by context. And here's the paradox. People who are always offline are often deeply connected internally. You might feel things intensely. You might care more than others realize. You might replay conversations in your head, analyze subtext, reflect long after an interaction ends. From the outside, you appear distant. On the inside, you are engaged. But there can be a quiet trade-off. Observation without participation can protect you from judgment. It can also limit how fully others get to know you. Not because you lack substance, but because your substance remains private. There's a subtle tension here. Part of you values privacy, autonomy, control. Another part may quietly long to be understood without having to perform it. This internal negotiation can be exhausting, deciding what to reveal, calculating how it might be received, wondering whether being seen is worth the risk.
and yet your pattern makes sense. In psychological terms, this can reflect a balanced but cautious attachment to social systems. You are not disconnected, you are discerning. You don't disengage from people, you simply choose to not center yourself in the interaction. But here's something counterintuitive. The very trait that keeps you in the background, your observational depth, is often what would make your presence valuable. You notice nuance, you sense shifts, you think before you speak. When you do engage, it tends to be intentional. The world often rewards volume over depth, but depth carries its own quiet power. Still, it's important to say clearly, being offline but always watching is not inherently better or worse than being expressive and visible. Some people regulate through sharing, others regulate through containing. Both are legitimate. The question isn't whether your pattern is right or wrong, it's whether it still serves you. Sometimes what began as protection becomes identity. I'm just private. I don't like attention. I prefer to observe. These statements may be true. They may also be layered with older experiences that shaped them. There's no urgency to change, no pressure to perform, but awareness softens rigidity. You're not antisocial, you're not detached, you're not strange for watching quietly from the edges. You might simply be someone whose nervous system values context before exposure, safety before expression, understanding before participation. And there's something steady about that. Your experience has logic, your behavior has history, your silence has meaning. You're not invisible because you don't matter. You're invisible because you learned how to disappear when necessary and how to reappear selectively. And maybe that's the deeper realization. You were never absent. You were paying attention. If this resonated with you, there's more to uncover about how your mind works. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe because more interesting content is on the way.